Do you think all schools can apply the 12 system as same as St. Cloud?
I think so, yes. So most schools, most colleges and universities have something like D2L, and the K-12 school system in the United States has different things like D2L. They have things like Schoology, Weebly. I'm trying to think of the other names of the things that they use. Blackboard, different. So they have different systems, like D2L. They all are a little different, but they do. I definitely think schools could use them. Yes.
So please tell me about strengths and weakness of D2L.
Okay. So D2L is really strong in being able to post all of the materials you need, a lot of links to websites and things that you want to use. It's very good for sending class emails, so email instructions to everybody. It's very good with keeping a grade book, so students know what they've turned in and haven't turned in. So it's really strong in those areas. A couple of weaknesses, the discussions in there are threaded, so it's very hard to find things. You have to jump all over the place. It's very difficult. Most students complain about it. And I don't like it because as an instructor, when I try and go find something, I'm all over the place trying to figure out what the thread is. So I don't like how their discussions are set up. And one strength D2L has is it has something called intelligence agents. So I can send emails to students if they haven't opened an assignment yet and it's due in a day or a week and they haven't opened it. I can send automatic emails so that I don't have to constantly go through and check all the time as a teacher to see who's done things and who hasn't. And I can send them, emails to say, hey, you need to open this up, and with a link to open it up inside. However, D2L is, I don't know, there's some weird glitch in there that a student can open the file or download the file without opening it. And so then D2L thinks they haven't touched it when they really have. So there's a little weird things like that in D2L. But some of the tools are great. So it's a good tool so that you can notify students without constantly wasting time to see who's done things or who's opened things. But they have weird little things in them.
Then how can school could do blended class? If they don't have any D2L system or other software.
It would be very hard to do without a system. I'm not sure how well that would go because I guess mainly what you would have to have is an email or some way to contact your students list. But then you would have to get all of the materials together and you have to send that through an email. Or create your own website, and it's a lot of work. So I think systems like D2L or Schoology or Blackboard let you set it up in a system that's already kind of has a structure, so it makes it teaching a little easier.
Sure. And how can combine blended and flipped class? This is my main subject, like blended learning and flipped areas, like flipped
So
class.
doing both together?
Yeah, doing both, like.
So doing a blended class, meaning a little bit online, a little bit in class, but then also doing flipped.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think a hybrid class is in some sense flipped because you do a lot of work at home and you learn material at home and then you come in and do an activity and you talk about what you've learned at home. So that's a little bit of flipped, but it's not quite the same because usually you have to keep learning new material. So in my blended classes, we come to class and I ask, does anybody have any questions? We can go over some of that material, but we don't purposefully go over things. I don't have purposeful activities on the days that we're in class, whereas a flipped classroom, you more have them watch some material and then have some purposeful activity.
Mm-hmm.
But you could do that with a blended class. So you could do some online things
Mm-hmm.
and then have some purposeful activities when they come back that connect to all those weeks that they've learned stuff online. So
Yeah.
I could see you could do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard though, because it would be hard to tell
Mm-hmm.
for me as an instructor what I would have a hard time pulling apart. It's hard enough to figure out where students have misconceptions. So like when I plan my blended class, where I know students have the most difficulty, that's the things I do on campus.
Oh.
And the things that students are maybe a little more procedural in math,
Mm-hmm.
or students don't have as much trouble with,
Mm-hmm.
I do online because I feel like they can, and there's more resources. I tend to do that stuff online and do the other things on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And flipped, when I use a flipped classroom, it's usually when I have something very, very procedural. And then I want to do something like problem solving using those procedures. So it would be really hard for me, but I guess you could make those combine like that. Yeah.
Okay. And is there any strengths and weakness and about the combined blended and flipped class? I think you already told about that a little bit.
Probably a little bit.
Yeah.
The weakness, it would be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to
Combine.
figure out, because really flipped means your lecture piece is at home and your kind of your homework work piece is at school.
Yeah.
That was, for me, that at least that's what I think about as flipped.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas hybrid
Mm-hmm.
is you learn some at home and you learn some on campus. And for me, I split that up by things students have an easier time with versus a harder time with.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it would be a weakness would be that I'd be having them learn these things online, and then I wouldn't know where to flip and not flip. It would feel very confusing to me as an instructor. But I could, if I think about it long enough, it could be a real strength to have all of those weeks online, or however many weeks online, and then maybe come back with a real purposeful activity, so it kind of flipped things around, and then continue on after that. So
Yeah, I think you already told about how can overcome weakness. Yeah. Thank you.
You're very
so
welcome.
much. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Do you have anything